Hey everyone, welcome to my final part 3 of my 2022 Oklahoma Sooner football preview. This show, we will talk about the schedule for the Sooners. We'll break it down. I'll give you my prediction at the end on how I think the Sooners will do, how I think they'll fare in terms of the postseason, and I'll tell you who I think will be the Final Four in this year's college football playoff and who will win the national championship. September 3rd, September 10th, back-to-back home games to start the Sooner campaign. Both should be comfortable wins, taking on Texas El Paso on September 3rd at 2:30 p.m. Oklahoma kickoff time on Fox. And the Sooners, for Brent Venables' head coaching debut, should coast in this game. UTEP has already started this season with a loss during week 0, losing at home decisively to North Texas. Now, the second game for the Sooners, September the 10th against Kent State. The Golden Flashes did make a bowl game last year. Decent running game, but overall, again, this should be a game, talent-wise, scheme-wise, that the Sooners should fare pretty well in. By the way, the Sooners are a 30-point favorite to defeat UTEP, and they're going to be a pretty sizable favorite to defeat Kent State. Just a reminder that this game would have been the pay-per-view game in seasons past, which meant if you wanted to watch the game at home, you would have had to shell about 50 or 60 or even $70 of your hard-earned money. Now, this type of game, it will be live on ESPN Plus, so it will be streamed. I think it's like $7 or $8 per month to get an ESPN Plus subscription. My advice to you, unless you're a pure college football junkie, if you don't have access to the game, you can go to a pub, you can go to a restaurant, or you can just pay the $6.99 per month fee for ESPN Plus and then cancel the subscription as soon as the game is over. So let's take a look at September the 17th. That's OU's first road game. It's against a big-name program, but a program that hasn't done anything big in a while, and that's Nebraska, who hasn't gone to a bowl game in 6 years. And last season, the Huskers went 3-9. 3-9, losing all 9 other games by single digits and losing 7 of those 9 games by a touchdown or less. And that included the matchup in Norman last year. Nebraska did give Oklahoma a game before the Sooners pulled away. Nebraska, by the way, if you thought Scott Frost's seat was already hot, well, his seat now is blistering hot after dropping the season opener a week ago to Northwestern. Nebraska's going to play with a lot of adrenaline. They'll come ready to play, so I wouldn't be surprised if this matchup for the Crimson and Cream is competitive for a while. But this is a game overall that if Oklahoma shows up to play, they should pull away in the second half. This is a game that they should not lose. Now we go to the following week, September 24th, the Big 12 opener, Kansas State, and the Wildcats have been a recent thorn in the Sooners' side. Chris Klieman, he's coached against Oklahoma 3 times now, and has won 2 of the 3 matchups, including the game 2 years ago in Norman, in which K-State came from 21 points behind to shock the Sooners. And Deuce Vaughn, one of the best all-purpose players in the country, he can hurt you running the ball out of the backfield, but he can also hurt you too on special teams. It seems like Vaughn has been there forever. He's All-American type talent, and he will give Oklahoma fits. This is one of those games that worries me because it's after the Nebraska game. It's the season opener. I think it's homecoming, and that could be a distraction as well. So we enter October 1st. The Sooners' first conference road game will be against TCU. TCU is not the same Horned Frog team that we saw in the late 2000s and much of the 2010s, in which those defenses would lay a lick on you and didn't give up very many points. Lately, that's been one of the problems for TCU. They haven't played very good defense, and their longtime coach, Gary Patterson, he's coaching defense at the University of Texas. So now you have Sonny Dykes. I think Sonny Dykes will do a good job offensively, but I think TCU's defense will continue to have problems, and I look at Oklahoma being able to handle TCU. The following week, yes, all bets are off. Throw the records away. It's always one of Oklahoma's biggest games of the year, the Red River Shootout, the Sooners and the Longhorns. Oklahoma has had recent success against UT, winning 9 of their last 12 games against the Longhorns, but most of those victories have been extremely competitive. And last year, the Sooners were cardiac kids at Dallas by coming back from 21 points down to stun Texas in one of the best Red River Showdown games ever. Steve Sarkisian, whose team went 5-7 last year, just like TCU, and didn't go to a bowl game, needing to get off to a good start. Remember, Texas would have already have played Alabama in week number 2, and Texas entering the season already with a couple of significant injuries, including one on the offensive line. So, again, though, throw out the records when these two teams play, but Oklahoma has had Texas's number lately. The following week, you get Kansas at home. Kansas, one of the worst teams in the country, should be an automatic W. Of course, last year we thought it was going to be an automatic W in Lawrence, and Kansas just about pulled off one of the biggest shockers in quite some time, but thanks to Caleb Williams and some other spectacular plays in that game, the Sooners were able to pull out a Harry Houdini and win. Sooners aren't going to need heroics this time. They got the message. They'll be at home. Now, Kansas has Oklahoma's attention, and it should be a cakewalk. The following week, the Sooners don't play anybody. It's going to be a bye week, and then the following week, you're going to play Iowa State. Now, this game against Iowa State was supposed to have been a Thursday night game. That's right, a Thursday night game, but instead it's been pushed to 2 days later. Matt Campbell, he's beaten Oklahoma a couple of times, and he's also been competitive against Oklahoma in the games that the Sooners have been able to win. This time, though, I look for the Sooners to be just fine. It's virtually a brand new team for the Cyclones. They're picked to finish in the bottom half of the Big 12. And why? Because they lost just about everybody off last year's team. A ton of seniors, including Breece Hall, who I'm glad is with the New York Jets and no longer wearing a Cyclone jersey. He was a pretty good player. The next week, the Big 12 defending champions come to Norman. That's right, it's Baylor. You get them the opening Saturday of November. Baylor returning nearly everybody on the offensive and defensive line, so they'll remain at a top level physically, but they lost so many skilled players. The game's in Norman. Even though Dave Aranda, I think he's one of the best coaches in college football, I think this time the Sooners will get the job done. Then the next week, and this is a game that petrifies me because of the timing of it. It's the week after the Baylor game and the week before Bedlam. That's against West Virginia. Probably be a primetime game. Weather could be a factor in Morgantown. It'll be the Sooners' first trip to West Virginia in 4 years. Remember, the game 2 years ago got canceled because of COVID. And JT Daniels is a pretty experienced quarterback. Neil Brown knows offense. And, just like Scott Frost and some other coaches across the country, Neil Brown's on the hot seat. But that seat would get a lot cooler if he can pull off an upset against the Sooners. And then the next week, it's Bedlam. Of course, last year's game, the 37-33 heartbreak defeat that the Sooners suffered at the hands of Spencer Sanders and the Cowboys. Mike Gundy typically puts a quality team on the field, but I like the fact that the Sooners this time will have home field advantage. That'll be a pretty big factor. I look for the Sooners this time to play better defensively against the Cowboys than they did a season ago. And the Sooners wrap up the season against Texas Tech, the Red Raiders, new head coach, but it's going to be the same result. They'll put points on the board, but they'll give up a lot more. I look for the Sooners to win at Lubbock. They haven't lost at the South Plains since 2009. I've got the Sooners going 10-2. It's going to be a pretty good first season for Brent Venables, but it's a lot of new players you have, a new system, a lot of new everything, and they'll win quite a few games, but there's going to be a game or two that will sneak up on the Sooners. I think Kansas State and West Virginia could be those two games that spell losses for the Sooners. And then I still think the Sooners will get to the Big 12 championship game, and they will beat Baylor in Arlington, and I think the Sooners will go to the Sugar Bowl. I don't think this particular team, not this season, not this team, they're not going to get to the college football playoff. 2 losses, you're not going to get there. I have Utah, I've got Ohio State, Clemson, and, what a shocker, Alabama making it to the Final Four. And I have Alabama, another shocker, winning the national championship over Ohio State. They're just too good in almost every position, especially at quarterback with Bryce Young. Going to be a terrific year for Oklahoma State, but I think as far as being in that national championship circle, perhaps 2023. That's my third and final part of my 3-part preview. Thanks for watching. Boomer Sooner.